My name is Nathan Cole. I'm 42 years old, and for nearly 2 decades, I was the invisible guardian of Dataflow Solutions' entire IT infrastructure here in Denver, Colorado. You know those people who keep the lights on while everyone else sleeps? That was me. Every morning, I'd drive down I-25 from my house in Lakewood, coffee in hand, watching the Front Range Mountains wake up in the distance, knowing that somewhere in our downtown office building, hundreds of servers were humming along perfectly, because I'd made sure of it. Para continuar ouvindo essa história tão linda e especial, deixe seu gostei e se inscreva no canal. Escreva seu nome e a cidade que está assistindo para que eu inclua numa próxima história. Uma saudação especial para você aqui. 20 years. That's how long I'd been the guy who answered calls at 2 a.m. when the payment processing system hiccuped. The guy who wrote custom patches for legacy systems that were older than some of our employees. The guy who survived 4 different department heads, each one promising to modernize everything, before quietly asking me to keep the old systems running just a little longer. I remember when I first started at Dataflow, the office was smaller then, just 3 floors of a building on 17th Street. Denver was different too. Less crowded, more affordable. I could actually afford my mortgage on a single engineer's salary. The tech scene was growing, but it wasn't the circus it became later. We were just a mid-sized company, helping other businesses manage their data flow, and I was the guy who made sure their data actually flowed. Back then, I was the young hotshot, fresh out of CU Boulder with a computer science degree, and fire in my belly. I wanted to rebuild everything, optimize everything, make everything cutting edge. My first boss, Jim Morrison, yeah, like the Doors guy, he used to joke. He taught me something I never forgot. Nathan, the best system is the one that works so well, nobody even knows it exists. And that's exactly what I built. Over 20 years, I crafted an infrastructure so reliable, so seamlessly integrated, that people forgot it was even there. The accounting department could run their month-end reports without thinking about servers. The sales team could access customer data from anywhere, without worrying about security. The executives could make decisions based on real-time dashboards that I'd personally coded and maintained. Marcus Chen arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, and I should have known he was trouble the moment he walked into our floor. He was 34, fresh from a consulting firm in San Francisco, and he wore his MBA from Stanford like a badge of honor. The board had hired him as our new CFO, and his first week was spent in meetings with department heads, assessing operational efficiency, and identifying cost optimization opportunities. Corporate speak for figuring out who to fire. Nathan, right? He said, appearing at my desk on his 3rd day. I've been reviewing our IT expenditures, and I have some questions. I minimized the server monitoring screen I'd been watching and turned to face him. Sure, what can I help you with? He pulled out a tablet and started scrolling through numbers. Your salary represents 23% of our entire IT budget. That seems disproportionate. I maintain 847 servers, manage security for 600 employees, and oversee data flow for clients processing $2.3 billion annually. I said calmly. I'd say that's proportionate. He smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. I'm sure you're very good at what you do, but I'm wondering if we're paying Mercedes prices for Honda functionality. Over the next few weeks, Marcus started showing up more frequently. He'd ask questions about our systems, about automation, about whether we really needed someone with my experience level for routine maintenance. He'd bring his tablet and take notes, nodding like he understood the technical details, when I could tell he was just waiting for me to stop talking. Have you considered cloud migration? He asked one day in April. AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, they're handling infrastructure for companies 10 times our size. We've evaluated it, I said. For our specific needs, with our legacy systems and compliance requirements, hybrid infrastructure is more cost-effective and reliable. More cost-effective than eliminating a $180,000 salary. There it was, the number he'd been building toward. My salary wasn't just a line item to him, it was a target. His name was Tyler Hoffman, and he was everything I used to be. Young, eager, and convinced that newer was always better. 24 years old, fresh out of MIT with a computer science degree, and a head full of theories about modern infrastructure. He showed up on a Monday morning in June, with a laptop covered in tech company stickers, Google, Facebook, Tesla, SpaceX, like a roadmap of where he wanted his career to go. Marcus introduced him as our new infrastructure optimization specialist, which was a fancy way of saying, the guy who's going to replace Nathan once we figure out how to fire him. Tyler was supposed to be an intern, but Marcus had already made it clear that this was more of an audition than a learning experience. Tyler's going to shadow you for the next few weeks, Marcus explained. Learn your processes, understand our systems, help us modernize our approach. Tyler had one of those firm handshakes that young guys practice in the mirror. I'm really excited to learn from you, Nathan. I've heard you're like the legend around here. Like, the legend. Christ. I felt every one of my 42 years. The first week, Tyler was genuinely impressive. He picked up our system architecture faster than most junior engineers I'd trained. He asked smart questions, took detailed notes, and didn't pretend to understand things he did. He even caught a minor configuration error in one of our backup scripts. Nothing critical, but it showed he was paying attention. This is really complex stuff, he said on his third day, scrolling through the monitoring dashboard I'd built. How do you keep track of all these interdependencies? Experience, I said. And a lot of 3 a.m. phone calls. He laughed. Yeah, I've heard about those, but couldn't we automate most of this monitoring? Set up alerts, automated failovers, maybe migrate some of these legacy systems to containers. There it was, the eternal optimism of youth. The belief that every problem has a technological solution, and that solution is always newer, faster, better. It happened on a Thursday morning in late June. I was in my usual spot, monitoring overnight logs with my second cup of coffee, when Jennifer Walsh appeared at my desk. With that particular HR smile, that means we need to talk privately. Nathan, can you come to conference room A? We have a brief meeting. Brief meetings in conference room A were never brief, and they were never good news. Conference room A was where they fired people. It had a solid door, soundproof walls, and a box of tissues on the table. Marcus was already there when I arrived, sitting across from Jennifer with his tablet open and a manila folder in front of him. The folder was thick. They'd been preparing for this. Nathan, please sit down, Jennifer said. We need to discuss some changes to your position. I sat down. 20 years of working in corporate America had taught me that the best strategy in these situations was to stay calm, ask questions, and let them hang themselves with their own words. What kind of changes? Marcus cleared his throat. Nathan, we appreciate everything you've done for Dataflow Solutions. Your dedication over the past 2 decades has been invaluable. Past tense. Dedication had been invaluable. Not is invaluable. However, he continued, we need to make some strategic adjustments to our IT operations. We're moving toward a more agile, cost-effective structure. What does that mean specifically? Jennifer opened the folder. We're eliminating your current position as senior systems engineer. We're restructuring the department to focus on modern infrastructure management and cloud-based solutions. And Tyler will be transitioning to a full-time role as infrastructure specialist. Marcus said. He'll be implementing the modernization initiatives we've been discussing. So there it was. They were firing me and promoting the intern. Not because I'd done anything wrong. Not because I couldn't do the job. But because Tyler was younger, cheaper, and more agile. What's my severance package? I asked. Jennifer slid a paper across the table. We're offering 6 months' salary, continuation of health benefits for the same period, and a positive reference letter. 6 months. For 20 years of service. For being the guy who kept their systems running when nobody else could. I signed the paper, not because I agreed with their decision, but because I didn't have a choice. Colorado is an at-will employment state. They could fire me for any reason or no reason, as long as it wasn't discrimination. And too expensive isn't a protected class. The next 2 weeks were the longest 14 days of my career. I had to smile, be professional, and systematically hand over 20 years of accumulated knowledge to the kid who was taking my job for half the salary. Tyler, to his credit, seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the situation. He knew what was happening, And he wasn't stupid enough to believe it was fair. But he was also 24 years old, with student loans and career ambitions. "I'm sorry about this," he said on Monday morning. "I know this sucks for you. It's not your fault," I said. And I meant it. "You didn't ask for this situation." We started with the easy stuff: password lists, system documentation, contact information for vendors. Then we moved to the complex systems. The custom scripts that kept our legacy databases synchronized, the monitoring tools that tracked performance across 80 different servers, the backup procedures that ensured we could recover from any disaster. Tyler was a fast learner. But some things can't be taught in 2 weeks, like the intuition that tells you when a system is about to fail, even when all the monitoring shows green lights. Or the tribal knowledge about why certain servers are configured in seemingly inefficient ways. "This seems overly complicated," Tyler said on Wednesday, looking at our backup rotation schedule. "Why don't we just use automated cloud backups?" "Because 3 years ago, we tried that," I said. "The cloud provider had an outage that lasted 6 hours. During that time, we couldn't access our backups. And we had 2 server failures. We barely recovered in time to process payroll. But that was 3 years ago. Cloud infrastructure is much more reliable now. Maybe. But our current system works. We've had 0 backup failures in 5 years. This was the conversation we had about everything. Tyler saw opportunities for improvement. I saw potential points of failure. He wanted to modernize. I wanted to maintain stability. By Thursday, Tyler was handling routine maintenance tasks independently. He could restart services, check system logs, and respond to basic alerts. He was competent enough to keep things running during normal business hours. But IT infrastructure isn't about normal business hours. It's about the exceptions, the edge cases, the failures that happen at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. "What if the payment processor goes down?" I asked on Friday. "I restart the service," Tyler said confidently. "What if restarting doesn't work?" "I check the logs, identify the problem, and fix it." "What if the logs don't show anything obvious?" Tyler paused. "I call you. What if I don't answer? I call Marcus. Marcus doesn't know how to restart his own computer. What if it's 3 a.m. on a Sunday?" Tyler trailed off. "I guess I'd figure it out." That was the problem. Tyler was smart, capable, and well-trained, but he'd never been alone with a critical system failure. And no backup plan. On my last day, I gave Tyler a printed binder with everything I'd documented. It was 3 inches thick. "This is everything I can think of. But there's still stuff I know that I don't know I know, if that makes sense. The most important thing," I continued, "is that you're not trying to prove yourself. You're trying to keep the business running. When something goes wrong, your job isn't to fix it elegantly. Your job is to fix it quickly and safely." Tyler nodded. "I'll remember that." I didn't go home after cleaning out my desk. Instead, I drove straight to REI, bought a tent and camping gear, and headed west on I-70. I needed space to think, and Colorado's got plenty of that. I drove through the Eisenhower Tunnel, past Vail, past Grand Junction, and into Utah. The landscape changed from Colorado's green mountains to Utah's red rock desert. And with each mile, I felt the weight of the last 20 years lifting off my shoulder. I set up camp in Arches National Park, just outside Moab. No cell service, no internet, no alerts pinging on my phone about system performance. Just red rock, blue sky, and the kind of silence that makes you realize how much noise you've been carrying around in your head. The first night was rough. I kept waking up, reaching for my phone to check for emergency alerts that weren't there. 20 years of being on call 24/7 had trained me to sleep with one ear open. I spent 3 days in Moab, hiking during the day and sitting by the campfire at night. The desert has a way of putting things in perspective. Out there, under that massive sky, my problems seemed smaller, not unimportant, but manageable. From Moab, I drove to the Grand Canyon, then to Zion National Park, then to Bryce Canyon. Each place was more beautiful than the last, and each night I felt more like myself. Not Nathan the IT guy, not the man who'd been replaced by a cheaper alternative, but just Nathan. From Utah, I drove to Arizona. I wanted to see the desert in summer, to experience the kind of heat that makes you understand why people built civilizations around water. I camped near Sedona, hiked in the early morning before the temperature hit triple digits, and spent the afternoons reading books I'd been meaning to read for years. It was in Flagstaff, Arizona, sitting in a Starbucks with my laptop, that I started thinking about what came next. I'd been gone for 2 weeks, and I hadn't thought about data flow solutions once. But now, as I checked my email for the first time since leaving Denver, I started wondering how Tyler was doing. I had 17 unread emails, mostly spam and newsletters. Nothing from Data Flow Solution. No emergency calls, no requests for help. Either Tyler was handling everything perfectly, or he was handling it well enough that nobody was panicking. I spent another week in Arizona, driving through the desert, visiting small towns, talking to people who'd never heard of Data Flow Solutions or server uptime. It was refreshing to be just another guy in a coffee shop. I was still mulling over these questions when my phone rang at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I was camped in the desert outside Flagstaff, dead asleep in my tent, when the ringtone cut through the Arizona night like a fire alarm. The caller ID said Data Flow Solutions. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But 20 years of being on call had trained me to answer the phone, no matter what time it was or how I felt about the person calling. Nathan Cole, I said, trying to sound alert. Nathan, it's David. David was our CTO, my old boss, a decent guy who'd been caught in the middle of Marcus's cost-cutting crusade. I'm sorry to call so late, but we have a situation. What kind of situation? The system's down. Not partially down, completely down. Payment processing, customer databases, everything. We've been trying to fix it for 3 hours. I sat up in my sleeping bag. What happened? Tyler was running a migration script on the customer database. Something went wrong, and it overwrote the production data. We tried to restore from backup, but the backup system isn't automated the way we thought it was. Of course it wasn't. The backup system was semi-automated, with manual verification steps that I'd been doing for years. I'd documented the process, but documentation doesn't replace experience. Where's Tyler now? He's pretty shaken up. He's been working on it for hours, but he can't figure out how to restore the production database without losing the current data. And Marcus? Marcus is here. He's been asking if we have any way to contact you. I looked at my phone. 3:17 a.m. I was in the middle of the Arizona desert, 3 states away from Data Flow Solutions. They'd fired me 2 weeks ago, and now they were calling me to fix the mess they'd created. David, I said, am I still too expensive? Long pause. Can you help us? I knew exactly what had happened, and I knew exactly how to fix it. There was a recovery procedure I'd built into our backup system, specifically for this kind of disaster. Put Marcus on the phone, I said. A minute later, Marcus's voice came through the speaker. He sounded tired, stressed, and about as far from confident as I'd ever heard him. Nathan, we need your help. Whatever you want, we'll pay it. 3 times my old hourly rate, I said, and I'm billing from the moment I answered the phone. Done. And Marcus, next time you want to cut costs, remember that cheap and capable aren't the same thing. I stayed on the phone with David while I broke down my campsite in the dark. The situation was worse than I'd initially thought. Tyler's migration script hadn't just overridden the customer database, it had corrupted the transaction logs, which meant we couldn't simply roll back to the last known good state. Walk me through exactly what Tyler did, I said, stuffing my sleeping bag into my backpack. He was trying to optimize the customer table structure. David said, something about improving query performance. He ran a script that was supposed to update the schema, but it ended up overwriting the production data with test data. I knew exactly what had happened. Tyler had written a script that worked perfectly on his local development environment, but production had dozens of dependencies and relationships that didn't exist in the test environment. What's the business impact? I asked, getting in my car. We're processing about $200,000 in transactions per hour, David said. We've been down for 3 hours, so we're looking at $600,000 in lost revenue so far. I started driving north on I-17, toward I-40, and the long drive back to Denver. But I wasn't going to wait until I got there to fix this. Okay, I said, pulling over at a rest stop. I'm going to fix this remotely, but I need someone who can follow my instructions exactly. No improvisation, no shortcuts. Can Tyler do that? He's pretty rattled, David said. Tyler caused this. Tyler's going to fix it, but I'm going to hold his hand through every step. David, put Tyler on the phone. The kid sounded exhausted and scared. Nathan, I'm so sorry, Tyler said. I thought I understood the system, but Tyler, stop. We don't have time for apologies. We have a business to say. Are you ready to follow my instructions exactly? Yeah. I spent the next 45 minutes walking Tyler through the most complex database recovery procedure I'd ever designed. It involved manually reconstructing the transaction log, identifying which data was corrupted versus which was simply overwritten, and rebuilding the customer table from multiple backup sources. The process was terrifying. One wrong command could have made the situation worse. But Tyler, to his credit, followed every instruction precisely. Okay, I said, now run the verification script. I could hear Tyler typing, then a long pause. It's working, Tyler said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. The customer data is loading correctly. Don't celebrate yet, I said. We need to verify data integrity across all related tables. Another pause. More typing. Everything's checking out, Tyler said. The system is coming back online. I looked at my phone. 4:02 a.m. We'd been down for 3 hours and 45 minutes. I'd fixed it in 45 minutes, from a rest stop in the middle of the Arizona desert, using nothing but my phone and 20 years of experience. Tyler, I said, do you understand what just happened? I screwed up, and you saved my ass. That's part of it. But do you understand why this happened? Tyler was quiet for a moment. Because I didn't understand the system as well as I thought I did. That's right. You understood the technology, but you didn't understand the business. You optimized for performance instead of reliability. And in infrastructure, reliability always comes first. I get it now. I hope you do. Because next time, I might not be available to fix it. I didn't drive back to Denver that night. Instead, I drove to a motel in Flagstaff, got a room and slept until noon. When I woke up, I had 17 missed calls and 43 unread emails. Dataflow Solutions wanted to talk. The first email was from David Kim, thanking me again and asking if I'd consider returning to my old position. The second was from Marcus, apologizing for the difficult transition and offering to discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement. I deleted all of them without responding. Instead, I called my brother Mike in Portland. You're not going to believe what happened last night. I told him about the 3 a.m. phone call, about fixing their system from a desert rest stop, about Tyler's mistake and the $600,000 in lost revenue. So they fired you to save money, then paid you 3 times your old rate to fix the problem they created. Mike said, that's about the size of it. And now they want you back. They want something. I'm not sure what. What are you going to do? I looked out the motel window at the mountains surrounding Flagstaff. I'm going to finish my vacation. Then I'm going to figure out what I actually want to do with my life. But you're not going back? I don't think so. They showed me who they are. I'd be stupid to ignore that. That afternoon, I drove to Sedona and hiked Bell Rock. Sitting on top of that rock, looking out over the Verde Valley, I had a moment of clarity. For 20 years, I'd been so focused on being indispensable that I'd forgotten to be valuable. Dataflow Solutions had taught me an important lesson. Loyalty is a one-way street. Companies don't care about your dedication, your sacrifice, or your expertise. They care about their bottom line. But I'd also learned something else. I was good at what I did, really good. Good enough that when their entire business was on the line, I was the only person who could save it. I spent the rest of the week in Arizona, ignoring calls from Dataflow Solutions and thinking about my next move. I had options. The Denver tech scene was booming, and experienced system engineers were in high demand. But did I want to start over at another company, or did I want to do something different? By the end of the week, I'd made my decision. I was going to start my own consulting business. I was going to be the guy that companies called when their systems were failing, and they needed someone who could fix anything. I drove back to Denver on a Sunday, stopping at my favorite coffee shop on Broadway for the first time in 3 weeks. The barista recognized me. Haven't seen you in a while, she said. You look relaxed. I am relaxed, I said, for the first time in 20 years. Monday morning, I registered Cole Systems Consulting as an LLC. Tuesday, I built a website. Wednesday, I started reaching out to contacts in the Denver tech scene. By Friday, I had my first client consultation scheduled. That's when David Kim called. "Nathan, we need to talk. Marcus wants to make you an offer." "I'm not interested in coming back," I said. "Just hear us out. We're talking about a significant raise, better benefits, more autonomy." "David, they fired me 3 weeks ago because I was too expensive. Now they want to pay me more money to do the same job. We made a mistake. We're trying to fix it. I'm starting my own consulting business. I'm going to help companies avoid the kind of mistake you made. Nathan, please, just meet with us. One conversation." "I'll have one conversation," I said, "but not about coming back, about a consulting contract. Short-term, specific scope, my rates." "What kind of rates?" $400 an hour. Minimum 4-hour billing, and I choose which projects I take." There was a long pause. "I'll talk to Marcus." An hour later, David called back. "He agreed to your terms. When can you start?" "I'm already started. My first project as Cole Systems Consulting was exactly what I'd expected, fixing the mess that Tyler and Marcus had created. But this time, I was doing it on my terms, at my rates, with complete control over the scope and timeline. Marcus and I met at a neutral location, a coffee shop in Lodo, away from the Dataflow Solutions office. "Nathan, I want to apologize," he said. "We made a mistake letting you go." "You made a mistake," I corrected. "I was just the casualty." I outlined my proposal: $400 an hour for hands-on work, $200 an hour for training and documentation, minimum 20 hours per week for the next 3 months. The total cost would be approximately $60,000, more than they'd save by firing me, but less than they'd lose if their system went down again. Marcus agreed without negotiating. The 3 a.m. phone call had scared him more than he wanted to admit. Everything was different this time. I wasn't an employee, I was a consultant. I set my own hours, chose my own projects, and answered to no one but myself. Tyler was initially nervous about working with me again, but I made it clear that I was there to help him succeed. "Tyler, I'm not your boss," I said. "I'm your consultant. My job is to teach you what you need to know, not to do your job for you." We worked together for 3 months. I taught him how to think like a systems administrator, not just a programmer. Within a month, he was handling routine emergencies without calling me. Within 2 months, he was proactively identifying and fixing problems before they became emergencies. Word had spread through the Denver tech scene about my consulting business. I had inquiries from 3 other companies, all of whom had heard about my 3 a.m. rescue of Dataflow Solutions. I offered Marcus a maintenance contract, $5,000 a month, for 24/7 emergency support, with additional hours billed at my standard rate. "That seems reasonable," Marcus said, "especially considering what we learned about the cost of not having proper support." 6 months after leaving Dataflow Solutions, I was sitting in my home office on a Saturday morning when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a Denver number I didn't recognize. "Cole Systems Consulting. This is Nathan." "Nathan, this is Rebecca Martinez from TechFlow Industry. I got your name from David Kim at Dataflow Solutions. We need help." TechFlow was a logistics company, about the same size as Dataflow, but with more complex infrastructure. "What kind of help?" I asked. "Our entire system went down yesterday. We've been trying to fix it for 18 hours. We're losing about $300,000 every hour we're down." 18 hours at $300,000 per hour meant they'd already lost $5.4 million. This wasn't just a systems failure. It was a business catastrophe. "What happened?" "Our head of IT quit last week. He didn't leave proper documentation, and we don't have anyone else who understands our systems." "I can help," I said, "but my rate is $500 an hour for emergency work, minimum 8-hour billing, and I need complete administrative access." "Done. How soon can you be here?" An hour later, I was in their server room. It was chaos, cables everywhere, servers with blinking error lights, and 3 junior engineers looking lost. I spent 2 hours doing digital archaeology, tracing through log files and mapping their infrastructure. The problem was a cascading failure from a power outage, complicated by incorrect backup procedures. "How bad is it?" Rebecca asked. "Bad, but not unfixable. I can recover most of the lost data, but it's going to take time. It took me 14 hours, working through the night. By Sunday morning, TechFlow Industries was back online. Their total downtime was 32 hours, which cost them about $9.6 million. My bill was $7,000. You saved our company, Rebecca said, as I was packing up my equipment. What would have happened if we couldn't fix this? You'd probably be filing for bankruptcy by Wednesday, I said. Rebecca hired me as their permanent IT consultant. The following week, TechFlow became my second anchor client, and word of mouth brought me 3 more clients within a month. A year later, Cole Systems Consulting had 12 regular clients and a waiting list. I was making more money than I'd ever made as an employee, working with companies that valued my expertise and never again being told I was too expensive. Tyler, meanwhile, had grown into a competent systems administrator. We still worked together occasionally, and he'd learned the most important lesson of all: the difference between being cheap and being valuable. Marcus called me last month. Dataflow Solutions is expanding, and they need help with a major infrastructure upgrade. The project is worth $200,000, and they want me to lead it. I said yes, not because I need the money, but because I enjoy the work, and because every time Marcus signs one of my invoices, he remembers the lesson he learned at 3:17 a.m. in the Arizona desert. Expertise has value, and that value is worth paying for. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's proving that they made a mistake by getting rid of you, then charging them premium rates to fix the problems they created. I'm Nathan Cole, and I'm no longer too expensive. I'm exactly as expensive as I should be.